Well, last year the Pistons were 7th in the lottery and turned out 7th. What are the odds that the Pistons pick 7th again this year?
59%, almost 60%, 83% chance they pick either 7th or 8th, a 15% chance they draw into the top 3. So, you know, the odds are that they'll stay where they are at 7th. And last year, you know, ironically enough, they went into that tied for 6th and 7th with Philly, lost a coin flip, and if they'd had Philly's combinations, they would have gotten the number 2 pick. Probably would have taken DeMarcus Cousins, and you know, at the time you thought, wow, it's a big drop-off to Greg Monroe. As it turns out, I don't think it was, and then you also have to wonder if they'd had Cousins with his emotional issues, how the chaos that, how that might have played out. So I think they're absolutely thrilled with Monroe.
Okay, yes, and I think they even talked the Pistons would trade up to get Cousins to go up to number 5 and get him, and that didn't happen. So if that 15% chance of 1, 2, and 3 does happen, who do you think the Pistons might be able to get in those who are the top 3 choices?
Right now there seems to be a consensus that KYRIE Irving, the freshman point guard from Duke, or Derrick Williams, kind of a combo forward, a sophomore from Arizona, would be the top 2 picks. 3 guys who would have been taken certainly ahead of 7 that pulled out of the draft are going to affect that. And all of those 3 guys would have been a candidate to go in the top 2. That's Perry Jones of Baylor, Jared Sullinger of Ohio State, and Harrison Barnes from North Carolina, all out of the draft. And that will obviously affect if the Pistons don't beat the odds, and if they stay at 7, that's obviously going to affect the quality, or at least the options they would have had at 7.
And judging by that, though, and what the Pistons wanted and got last year, you mentioned 2 point guards, meaning, or you mentioned one, you mentioned KYRIE Irving, but also Kemba Walker has moved up. So if 2 point guards go before the Pistons, doesn't that give them a better chance of getting a big man at 7?
Yeah, no question. I just don't know what big man will be left on the board that they would think was ready to contribute as a rookie. I think that there are 2 international big men that I think would have had, one of them at least would have had a chance to be pushed down to 7 if the 3 guys didn't pull out of the draft. And now I think it's very unlikely, and the 2 we're talking about here are ENES KANTER from Turkey, who should have been a freshman at Kentucky this year, was ruled ineligible by the NCAA. The other, a 7-footer from Lithuania, 18-year-old kid named JONAS VALANCIUNAS. Very little likelihood, unless Valanciunas, who has might have some contract issues, escape clauses in his European contract. If that's the case, he could last a 7, but it would also give the Pistons pause. Do we really want to take a guy that we don't think will be here?
And isn't there a 3rd international guy? And by the way, you almost need a pronunciation guide for this draft. It begins with an M.
Donatas Motiejūnas, another 7-footer from Lithuania. But another one, too, though, 6'11" kid named Jan Vesely, who's drawn some comparisons with Andrei Kirilenko, maybe a little bit like Jonas. He'd also be a possibility at 7.
Is Greg Monroe viewed as the center of the future or the 4/5 of the future? So if they can get a center, would they get one of these centers, or are they looking more for power forward, a position that's been wanting for a while here?
What they saw from Monroe this year gives them the confidence that they can take. If there's a true power forward, they're confident that Greg can play the center. If there's a true center they're confident Greg can play power forward. Monroe is a very versatile big guy, and that's what they saw from him this year. And I think they can look for, there are a number of different types of players who would complement him. I think more than power forward center, they're going to look for athlete, guy who maybe plays above the rim a little bit, whether that's a shot blocker on defense or a guy that you can throw the ball into in the low post on offense.
So I know you've said they want a pure shooter, but would they take a 1 or a 2? We're kind of loaded at the guard position, assuming Stuckey comes back, and he will, because he's restricted. The Pistons are going to keep him, 99% sure. They've still got Ben Gordon and Rip Hamilton at shooting guard, and if you want to even throw Tarico White in there, who's a shooting guard. So not a 1 or a 2 with the first pick, yes or no?
I think if the Pistons got the 1st or 2nd pick, if they got the 1st pick, I think they would be torn between Irving and Williams. You know, forget the positional needs. Williams is a guy who could be an elite scorer in this league. He could be a guy who scores 22, 24, 25 points a game. And, you know, you've seen the playoffs now. If you have that type of guy, you can go a long way with him. And on the other hand, KYRIE Irving, the NBA comp to him is Chris Paul. If you can say, we can slide Chris Paul in and maybe move Stuckey over eventually, the way Stuckey closed the season as a guy going to the basket. You know, if Irving really is a Chris Paul type and makes everybody around him better, then you take him.
And lastly, might as well throw a prediction out there so we can go back and look at the tape and see if you were right or not. But assuming that the Pistons pick 7th, which is the high likelihood, Give me 3 names that you think one which will wind up being a Piston.
Wow. International man of mystery Bismack Biyombo from the Congo could be a guy. He's got
The
14
18/26-year-old. Yeah,
he's
okay.
got 14 games under his belt in the second best pro league in the world, the Spanish ACB league. But really opened eyes at the Nike Hoop Summit. Had a triple-double: points, rebounds, block shots. I think if they stay at 7, Vesely is a guy who maybe the kid from the Czech Republic. And then, you know, a wild card, Alec Burks, a kid from Colorado, a sophomore who's kind of like a poor man's Brandon Roy.
Well, the draft is always exciting, and the mystery continues. And on June 23rd, we'll all find out together who the Pistons get at whatever slot they wind up having.